Shaping the mind field. A human being is part of the whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Albert Einstein. Who would we be if we forgot our name, age, gender, skin color, religion, preferences, state of health, and every other descriptor we use to differentiate ourselves from each other? What would our lives be like if we did not see each other as different from ourselves? Many of the problems we encounter in our lives are due to the misconception or misperception that we are separate from one another, when we are actually inseparable, connected to each other and everything else in the universe. We have all been conditioned by this limited view of reality to identify our mind and body as me and everything else as not me, resulting in loneliness, envy, violence, and prejudice. Every war, inquisition, ethnic cleansing, act of terror, or genocide is the external manifestation of our conditioned prejudice when someone's ideas, skin color, gender, religion, sexual nature, or physical appearance is different than our own. All these acts of violence are an attempt to extinguish the not me and assert the me. Many wars have been carried out to prove that my God is better than yours. But the real violence is the internal conflict which we experience throughout our lives because we do not know who we are and believe we are essentially different from others. In his book, Wholeness and the Implicate Order, renowned physicist David Bohm writes, "The widespread and pervasive distinctions between people which are now preventing mankind from working together for the common good, and indeed even for survival, have one of the key factors in their origin in a kind of thought that treats things as inherently divided. If physicists proffer that the entire universe is comprised of a singular luminous potential known as light, which we explored in the last chapter, the ancient mystical texts have historically referred to God and consciousness as light. Then how does this illusion of separateness come into being? The mind makes it matter. At a fundamental level, all that exists is an ocean of infinite potentiality, endless possibilities that only manifest as specific outcomes when measured by a device or a person acting as an observer. In theory, the observer should not impact whatever is being observed, resulting in an objective observation. However, it has been scientifically demonstrated that this is impossible. We cannot detach ourselves from our experiences, as the observer and observed are inseparably linked in part by the observer's point of view. Quantum physics gives us a glimpse of how the mind transforms a field of infinite possibilities into what appears to be distinct forms. The observer within us is the conscious mind, whose point of view is the network of well-defined ideas, beliefs, and memories about what we have established as reality. According to its conditioned concepts, the conscious mind projects definition and meaning into a formless environment, limiting its infinite possibilities into a subset that we call reality. In this way, you can say that the mind transforms light, the formless, into matter and assigns meaning to the matter. As a result, the mind makes matter, any collection of atoms and molecules, matter. has significance. As long as we continue to strictly view our experiences through the lens of the conscious mind, we remain locked in a circuit of duality. By judging our experiences as good or bad, right or wrong, black or white, we become enmeshed in our illusion of being separate from what we experience out there. But as the Talmud, a central text of Rabbinic Judaism, states, we do not see things as they are, we see them as we are. How we see ourselves is how we see the world. There is no experience without an experiencer. At the quantum level, nothing exists without an observer, for there simply is no reality independent of consciousness. So what is consciousness? For many people, consciousness is limited to self-consciousness, a state of being aware of oneself as well as one's internal and external environment. Consciousness extends far beyond this, however, and must be delineated into its local and non-local expressions. Local consciousness is associated with the conscious mind, the everyday reality of form, ego, and choice created with a boundless universe is confined to a singular point of view. Non-local consciousness is associated with the unconscious mind, the formless, egoless, and choiceless, infinite potential that exists before light is transformed into matter by the conscious mind's point of view. The unconscious is unavailable for analysis because there is no separate self to observe it. In The Social Animal, American journalist David Brooks writes, if the conscious mind is like a general atop a platform who sees the world from a distance and analyzes things linearly and linguistically, the unconscious mind is like a million little scouts. The scouts careen across the landscape, sending back a constant flow of signals and generating instant responses. They maintain no distance from the environment around them, but are immersed in it. They scurry about interpenetrating their other minds, landscapes, and ideas. We have all been conditioned to believe we are in control of our lives. Yet most of what happens in life occurs outside our conscious awareness, and few things are within our control. According to a physicist, Amit Goswami, author of The Self-Aware Universe, the conscious self is unconscious of most things most of the time, and of everything in dreamless sleep. Paradoxically, the unconscious is conscious of all things all the time. It never sleeps. Literally, trillions of processes take place in our bodies every second, and we are totally unaware of them. None of us has to remind our heart to beat, our body to breathe, or the trillions of cells within us to replenish themselves. None of us awakens the sun, moves the tides, or changes the seasons. Yet most of us place such importance on who we think we are and the ideas traversing our awareness that we forget that most of our life runs without our control or thought. Since the conscious mind of the ego and the unconscious mind of the infinite potential are both aspects of our totality, why do we identify ourselves with the limited view of the conscious mind to the exclusion of the limitless view of the unconscious? It's a lot of unconsciousness is in the book. Okay, the illusory me. During early infancy, a child exists in a state that Sigmund Freud described as oceanic bliss, unaware of anything other than its own boundlessness. This state of pure awareness exists because an infant's brain lacks the network of connections required to distinguish itself from the rest of the world. This innate lack of self awareness demonstrates that we come into this world hardwired to experience oneness. As a baby gradually develops and interacts with its environment and the individuals within, they become increasingly aware of the response to their actions by those around them. While certain behaviors are met with acceptance, others are frowned upon and, at times, penalized. This initially confusing experience eventually trains the child to monitor and modify their own way of being in an attempt to fit in and behave in the way that is acceptable to those around them. Self-talk first emerges during this process of self-guidance and self-regulation of behavior. Over time, this comforting inner dialogue takes on a personality of its own, giving rise to an individual sense of self and to the corresponding neural circuitry required to sustain the illusion that the child is different from those around them. As a result, their natural and effortless way of being is gradually replaced by a series of normal, conditioned behaviors. As the youngster matures and becomes increasingly more accustomed to the voice of the illusory ego, this commentary takes on a larger role in life. They become habituated to interacting with it and eventually accept it as the real and authentic expression of their uniqueness. The ego's roots, now well established, disguise the youth's boundless nature with this personality, whose self importance convinces them that they are on their own and must make things happen. In an attempt to accomplish that, they habitually think ahead, hoping to control life by exerting their so-called free will. Living in a minefield. This incessant pattern of worrying, planning, and rehearsing, which the Buddha referred to as the monkey mind, becomes increasingly louder and more distracting as the individual tries to ensure that their actions are acceptable and their needs are met. The individual becomes so identified with the voice in their head that it transforms their mind into a hall of mirrors and their body into a living canvas of their thoughts. Ultimately, our intrinsic cooperative nature is displayed by a more cooperative or competitive lifestyle aimed at producing safety, security, and predictability. But since there are no safety nets in a world that is constantly changing, our efforts often result in a great deal of stress and the feelings of emptiness because our reality does not match up with our mental paradigm. Based on the belief that we have free will, we assume there must be something wrong with us or something we are doing or not doing that is interfering with our presumed ability to manifest the life we want. So we try to identify the problem, which is often blamed on one's shadow, and to learn the secret of how to attract what we want so we can live a happy and successful life. We read book after book and attend workshop after workshop. We run in circles trying to chase away our shadow. But the faster we run, the faster our shadow follows us, never disappearing no matter what we do or where we go. If you saw someone chasing their shadow, you would think that person was crazy. And yet, this is precisely what we do when we assume something is wrong with us. What we call our shadow is nothing more than an aspect of our nature waiting to be embraced and reclaimed. one of the consequences of seeing the world through the conscious mind is that we judge everything, and that includes us. The idea that we are not enough the way we are hold on, I lost my spot. The idea that we are not enough in the way that we are, despite doing all the right things, such as meditating, eating right, and following a spiritual path, what we believe to be the recipe for enlightenment. Real peace continues to elude us. I can truly relate to this formula, as I did many of these same things on my own journey. Many of us spend our lives trying to become the person we think we would have been, were all our pieces left intact. After years of camouflaging my life with degrees and what were earned in hopes of convincing the world that I was smart, someone said to me, "You're constantly doing an impersonation of the person you already are." Like a dog who finally catches the tail they have been chasing only to realize it was their own, I finally recognized that I already was the person I was trying to become. To quote T.S. Eliot, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and to know the place for the first time." I love that quote. The idea of self-improvement sounds wonderful, yet it is often based on the idea that something is wrong with us and that we are separate from everything else. So we do everything we can in order to change, not realizing that we, as an integral part of the universe, are continually evolving. In the words of Greek philosopher Heraclitus, the only constant is change. We feel that the obstacles we face on our journey to wholeness are self-created and limit our own growth, not realizing that the stress and the sense of confinement that we feel are actually what fuels our development and evolution. It'll be a hard one for people to swallow, I think. Consider how a lobster grows. A lobster is a spongy animal that lives in a rigid shell that does not expand. As the lobster grows, its shell becomes uncomfortable and confining. To deal with this painful predicament, the lobster crawls under a rock where it feels safe from predatory fish, casts off its shell, and grows a new one. Throughout its life, it repeats this process over and over again. The lobster expands beyond its shell and goes into temporary safe seclusion until it develops a new shell that is secure and comfortable. Everything in life grows in this same way. A stressor is required to spur the evolutionary process. So when you are uncomfortable, it does not necessarily mean that you have done something wrong or are on the wrong track. It may just be the intelligence of life gently reminding you that it is time for change. A shadow is produced when an object blocks light. Whenever we block the light guiding our life, we create a shadow. Only when we are transparent and in alignment with the source of the light, as when the sun is directly overhead, does the shadow magically disappear. Our true awakening is the realization that nothing is wrong with us. We can only be who we already are in each moment. But this realization cannot be discovered while we look for it. It often comes when we least expect it. In 2002, while sitting on my couch, my eyes just gazing at the walls, I became aware of the intricate molding at the edge of the ceiling, the beautiful artwork on the walls, and the clean, clear, Zen-like quality present in my home. The beauty I noticed was a reflection of the way I saw and responded to everything in my life at that time. Suddenly, I felt as though honey was slowly being poured on the top of my head. I closed my eyes and noticed the sensation extending onto my forehead and temples. When it reached my eyes, tears began to flow down my face. I was overcome with the realization that there was nothing wrong with me. There had never been anything wrong with me. It was a moment of unconditional acceptance, a spontaneous gift of grace. The neurology of transcendence. In 1973, I was introduced to the practice of meditation as a way to reduce stress and quiet the mind. After months of daily practice, I was able to reach a deep state. My troubles disappeared as physical sensation, mental chatter, and emotional dissonance were minimized. Yet a silent, spacious awareness remained. These early experiences, along with the healing of my vision, which also occurred while meditating, were so profound that I wondered how the process of meditation altered our view of reality. Using blood flow as an indicator of brain activity, Dr. Andrew Newberg, Director of Research at the Marcus Institute of Integrative Health, found that when Tibetan Buddhists were meditating, they exhibited less activity in the brain area that creates a sense of separation between the self and the rest of existence, and more activity in the brain region that yields a sense of oneness. In addition, when Dr. Richard J. Davidson studied the Dalai Lama's most proficient meditators, Davidson, director of the Weizmann Laboratory for Brain Imaging and Behavior, found a considerable increase in activity in the brain area associated with feelings of joy, happiness, and compassion, and extremely powerful gamma waves in that same area of the brain, indicating heightened consciousness and bliss. In further support of Newberg and Davidson's findings, Dr. Roland Van Wijck, W-I-J-K, found that biophoton emission in healthy transcendental meditation practitioners was 35% lower than in the control group, indicating minimal light loss due to orgasmic integrity. That's organismic, not orgasmic. Since consciousness is inseparable from our well-being, and biophoton emissions is lowest with optimum health, Van Wijck's, W-I-J-K's, research indicates that the body functions more harmoniously as we disconnect from our conditioned responses and come from a state of oneness with life. Einstein said, "Beyond the tireless efforts of the investigator, there lurks a stronger, more mysterious drive. It is existence and reality that one wishes to comprehend. Whether the drive to understand reality guides us to look through a microscope for the irreducible, through a telescope for the infinite, or through meditation for the seed of our existence. The goals of the scientist and the mystic are the same: to discover the source of who we are." Okay, merging into oneness. We have grown so enamored with our conscious mind that we have forgotten that the only reason we are aware of its activity is because in each instance, our undifferentiated essence is witnessing it. Unless we are experienced meditators, most of us bypass the purity of this witness. Instead, we listen to the familiar voice that emerges emerges a millisecond later, commenting on that which has been witnessed. The voice of the conscious mind deliberates on whether something is good or bad, or whether we want it in our lives or not. The witness and the conscious mind are like the sun and the moon. Both appear to give off light. However, one is the source and the other its reflection. The shadow, huh? The witness is the sun, the limitless potential of the unconscious mind. The conscious mind, like the moon, reflects back a limited interpretation of reality through the lens of duality and conditioning. The conscious mind does not conceive, it merely considers a response to that which has been witnessed. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus spoke about going beyond duality, beyond the duality of the conscious mind, when he said, when you make the 2 one, the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, the above like the below, the male and the female one and the same, then you will enter the kingdom. We embrace the dichotomy of the conscious and unconscious minds, allowing both to merge with the unity of our nature when we accept life as it is. Most of us experience only what we believe to be true or possible in our lives. But what if we were able to suspend our beliefs and simply witness and accept all that we see with no point of view? According to 19th century poet William Blake, my fave, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. When someone asks us who we are, we tell them our name. If they ask us what we do, we tell them our occupation, a doctor, lawyer, plumber. When asked to describe ourselves, we say we are a man or a woman, white or of color, married or single, gay or straight. But who are we without these labels? We have all been trained to reduce the infinite possibilities of the universe into our own narrow prison-like view. But do not be too concerned, as the confinement created by the ego is an integral part of our life's journey towards self-realization, eventually becoming the catalyst for our prison break and ultimate freedom. In the essential teachings of Ramana Maharishi, the revered Indian sage states, thoughts arise because of the thinker. The thinker is the ego, which, if sought, will automatically vanish. To penetrate the veil of the ego, Maharishi recommends that when thoughts arise, one should ask silently, who had this thought? You will then probably hear me, then ask, who am I? Each time I follow this suggestion, the illusion of me, as the chatter in my mind, infinitely expands, and all that remains is the all-inclusive spaciousness. The thinker of thoughts, performer of deeds, and sense of individuality disappear without a trace, and what remains is pure awareness. Chapter 7 sounds fun, discovering the genius within us. See you next time.